OSHA requirements as it pertains to our folks that are out there for parks and recreation, public works, and engineering. So those are some of the bigger areas of emphasis that we're looking for in the city training. We got in our public works and engineering, I guess, touch points. Is that what we're calling it today? So I've still got 2 more departments to get in, and then I can have that list consolidated to you hopefully by the first meeting in December. That'd be my goal. It's a lot. There are quite a few touch points amongst all the departments, hundreds of them. So hopefully we'll be able to brief you on that. Like I said, first council meeting in December or at that work session, kind of answer any questions you might have. But I think it's a good starting point. Any other questions on the other Q4 goals?
Anybody got anything on that? All right. Thank you, Jonathan. We will move to our review of our agenda for our regular meeting at 6 o'clock. So if you'll turn in your big packet here. We'll have, of course, our roll call, opening prayer and pledge of allegiance, and approve our agenda. We've got one item that Rainer's going to brief us on at the end of this work session. We've got to decide whether to add that to the agenda or not. We'll decide that later, though. So our consent agenda consists of some work session and council meeting minutes, contract billings for the Phase 3A to Wiregrass Construction. How's that going, Glenn?
It's going well. The contractor's had a few weather delays, obviously, with some rain, but he was back. We'll be back tomorrow on Bellwood Road. I think they got about half of it paved. So some of that paving and some of the processing they use is not only rain, obviously, is a problem, but cold weather is also an issue too. So they're navigating some of the colder weather we have as well. So, but it's going well, in my opinion, at this point.
All right. Then task order for the same project to Polly, then Fine Getty Associates. That's a progress billing for our contract services. That's our state government relations agenda. Then we're going to recognize Chief Davis and Mayor Cooper to do a promotion in the fire department and a permit street closure request for Whoville celebration. That's just an amendment of the prior request, as you can see there. Then we'll go into privilege of floor and staff reports, and then move to old business, of which we'll have a public hearing. This ordinance 110122A, which is the short-term rental ordinance, was introduced 2 weeks ago. We're going to have a public hearing on that tonight, and then after that public hearing, we'll discuss as a council. We'll have a few options. We can adopt the ordinance as it was introduced. We can make some changes. You know, if there's small changes, we could adopt that tonight. But if we want to make any big changes, we probably need to lay that over. Talked to Jonathan earlier. He said that there's no absolute urgency on this, as long as, so if we want to, after our public hearing, if we want to discuss, and if there's a few things we want to make change to, we could lay that over and get Beverly to actually. Last thing we want to do is get sloppy with any changes and rush that through when there's no urgency. So those will be our options on that. Any discussion, or y'all want to just wait till after the public hearing to discuss that?
I can wait.
Yeah.
I
can wait. All right. Then we will consider bids for the new rec center. Jonathan, we've got some time set aside for that, right? Yeah, so we're going to skip over that agenda item. Public hearing and consideration for economic development grant agreement. Jonathan, you want to brief us on this? I know we've had some briefings on this in executive session. It's been advertised in the newspaper properly, so
So you'll see there that it says Aeronaut Realty Developer Inc. and Johnson Enterprise Shopping Center LLC. That's the Enterprise Shopping Center space. Part of your goal as a council, you looked at, I think, 3 areas in town. Of course, Rucker Boulevard, the Southern Bypass, and downtown area, as well as fixing blighted or vacant properties. And so, this agreement would bring new tenants, potentially a new build to an out parcel at that shopping center, as well as backfill vacant space at that shopping center with national name brand tenants that are not disclosed for a reason on here, but would be new to the market and in line with the provisions that you set forth for the mayor to negotiate on behalf of the council under the 772 agreement. Those agreements look like roughly 50% of the sales tax for up to 7 years, or $655,000, whichever comes first. It's prorated on their performance, so it's a performance-based incentive, meaning that it's not coming out of the tax coffers; it's coming out of taxes that the project itself would generate and from sales. So if they generate $0, they get $0.
So the city won't be spending any money until after they are performing, and the project's going to produce those funds.
That's right. And once they hit their target dollar amount, doesn't matter if it's 1 year, the most it can be is 7. But once they hit that, it's the agreement's off.
All right. Any questions? All right. We'll move on to our mutual aid consortium agreement, AAFC. I believe Chief Davis wants to update us on that.
So this was put together by the Alabama Association of Fire Chiefs. When it comes right down to it, all this is a mutual understanding between agencies that participate, that sign, as to responsibility, what kind of command structure will fall under, and in no way forces us to assist should someone call mutual aid. Obviously, we've all seen where we've been the recipient of that. It's little more than a mutual aid agreement that we would have with any of our local volunteer fire departments, but it's statewide. So essentially that agreement just makes sure that we can work together and we know the expectations of who is providing assistance and who is receiving assistance.
Any questions for Chief Davis? All right. Thank you, sir. All right, we've got a recommendation from staff to provide a one-time annual compensation adjustment, $150 to all full-time employees, $75 to part-time. This is we do every year. We can't call it a Christmas bonus, but it's an end-of-the-year payment compensation adjustment. So any questions on that? I know we discussed this in our last work session, so pretty straightforward there. Then our severe weather preparedness sales tax holiday, again, is something we do most years. We're just complying with the statute so that we can take advantage of that. Any questions on the sales tax holiday? Then we need to reappoint Paul Sherling as municipal judge for a 2-year term. His term is up, so we're reappointing him unless somebody else has additional appointments to consider, or nominations, I mean. All right, so we'll take care of Judge Sherling tonight. Then we've got a request from Chief Davis to seek bids on the 9 bay door replacements at Central Fire Station. This is a budgeted item. Anything to add there, Chief Davis, other than what we discussed in our budget discussions?
I'll get up here and say no. It's basically, the doors at the bottom building are dilapidated. One of them doesn't exist and it is boarded up. This is a fairly inexpensive way for us to be able to make it operational.
Yep.
Then we got to, hopefully we will get a good price.
Yeah, so you're going to get bids and bring it back to us. We're not spending any money tonight.
Correct. Yes.
Yep.
Yep. Barry's in my corner on that. He's the expert on that.
All right. Any questions of Chief Davis on the bay doors? All right, then we'll move to just a simple introduction of Blue Rose LLC ABC license request. We will not consider that tonight. That'll lay over to December 6th, and we'll have mayor's report and council comments. Any other items that need to be added to the agenda? Like I said, Rayner's got something we're going to discuss, a legal matter in executive session later, so we may have an item that comes out of that we need to add to the agenda. All right, back to our work session agenda. All right, Barry and Jonathan, y'all have an update for us on the recreation center and pool?
Yes, sir. Last Wednesday, we received bids with the bid date for the recreation center. We had a pre-bid meeting. We had 5 general contractors that attended the pre-bid meeting. It was a mandatory pre-bid meeting, so we kind of knew the pool. We had 5 bidders on the project. We were actually received 4 bids on the project. I think the bid tab was included in your package. The base bid plus all the alternates. Just to remind you, we wanted to be in a position where we could scale the project if it required so, depending on the bid prices. And we all know what bid prices have been all over the board here lately. The base bid was the recreation center. Alternate 1 was the pool with 4 25-yard lanes in it. So it's a kiddie pool and 25-yard 4 lanes. Alternate 2 was the additional lanes that were to get us to 6 lanes, which would be a competitive swim pool. The other alternates were a hardened center for a storm shelter within the center, outdoor, redoing some of the lighting in the other parking lot on the back side of the building, as well as some of the other things that we knew that we could break out. The heaters on the pool was an alternate as well. So all the alternates, everything included. The low bid was by Whaley Construction at $23,162,394. So $23.1 million, which was under our budget number, which we had planned for this project. So the architect has verified the bids and checked the requirements. The contractor is licensed and has everything to do this project. And he sent us a letter yesterday making a recommendation to award the project to Whaley Construction. And then staff also to the administrator has recommended that we move forward with this project if you desire so, with all the alternates at $23.16 million. And I'll be glad to answer any questions about the alternates. I've got them all here in front of me. Yes, sir. So there's in the $23.1 million, there's some things that are not included. So what is included is the box. And the way that I described it before is if you took the roof off the building and you shook it, nothing would fall out of the building. So there's things that we need to provide. We can't just have bricks and mortar. We've got to have other things. So there's FF&E costs, which are putting desks in the offices and recliners and chairs and stuff in the lobby areas, things that we need to do to prop the building up, as well as part of the requirements were the contractor bid on running the conduits to the outdoor lighting system, but the city's going to purchase the actual lighting system from Musco under the state bid contract. So there's several items that we need to add that we will pick up the bill for, but that total budget on that, my number for the total budget all in is $30 million. So that's engineering, architecture, FF&E, the other items we need to build. So we're all in at $30 million. That is the original number that we had thrown around was about 32. So that $30 million is about a $2 million savings off of what we anticipated. So we're excited about that. And we will work to get that number even farther down as we continue to get this project built, if y'all desire to move forward with it tonight.
And will we hire an outside contractor for things like the basketball goals, volleyball goals, nets, and
all that's included into the base bid?
Okay.
and on the center? So all the goals and all are all attached to the gymnasium, so they'll be able to hit a switch and they will fold down to be used, and then the basketball goals will go up, the volleyball nets will come down. All that's included into the bid. So
okay.
Nets, the appurtenances for all that would be included in that $23 million number. But we do have money in there also for basketballs and volleyballs. And, we've got it set up for partially to be used for banquet settings. So tables, chairs, things that we'll want to do to utilize this space for the citizens to use and for revenue generation for the city. So there's several other things we need to purchase outside that $23 million. But at this point, everything is favorable that we'll be under budget all in on this project.
Scoreboards too.
Scoreboards as well. We're talking about doing, since we have 4 basketball courts, and those things double up.
Right.
So you could put 2 pickleball courts in the area of 1 basketball court, as well as you can have 2 volleyball courts in the area of 1 basketball court. So we looked around at what other people are doing, and they have basically mobile carts with TV screens that we have to plug in, of course, with 110 with power, but they have control systems set up. So depending on what court or what game you're playing, we roll those scoreboards out to where they're playing ball, and they basically are wireless to the
But you'll
TV.
also have your traditional scoreboards on there.
I believe everything is done from for basketball and all. I believe is all the way they've got it wired is all by scoreboard, like mobile.
Okay.
We didn't want to wire anything into the center as far as sound or things that could be changed or updated through time. To be honest with you, I can't remember on the big scoreboards for the basketball, but we got 4 basketball courts. It's not like a traditional like Moose Hope where you have a scoreboard on each end. You got just one end on each thing. So do we put a scoreboard there or not? I believe we did everything wireless so that we could do the big TVs on it, and that's what everybody is moving towards in this kind of configuration because it is multi-use.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly. Thank you.
Any other questions?
If we do go ahead tonight and award the contract to Whaley, we will still have the options to go back and look at the alternates and decide which ones we want to do or not do.
So the way the bid's set up, Councilman, is we have a base bid, which is just the building, and then with the alternates are broken out individually, 1 through 6.
Yeah.
If you go forward the way it's written, you will be giving the mayor and the administrator the ability to negotiate a contract with the contractor with these alternates here. The alternates for each one, were listed as number 1 was the pool, 2 was the additional 2 lanes, number 3 was the secure space or the hardened space, number 4 playground equipment, that's the kiddie pool area, number 4 was the north parking lot poles to redo the lighting, and alternate 6 was the pool heaters. And if you don't have those numbers, I'd be glad to read those out to each one of those.
I'm familiar with them, and the one I had question about is the pool heater. So I wonder if we would have the option to discuss that at a later date.
So we got $88,000 as a bid price for the heaters for the pool. If you award it to them now, like the $23.162 million includes that number for heaters.
Right.
If y'all decide you do not want to do the heaters, we can retract that. Or if you award it to them, we can hold that
change
alternate.
order to deduct it.
Yes, sir, we could.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So is anybody opposed to moving forward with the recommendation of accepting all alternates and base bid?
Councilman, if I could,
Yeah,
I
go
just
ahead.
want to give you all the information. So we also, Barry, Billy Powell, anybody who touched this did a great job, in my opinion, keeping the numbers low in this environment. Who knew when you borrowed this money, over 18 months ago, we would go through what we went through over the last year and a half with inflation and everything else. But I just want to publicly say that they've done a great job. But in giving you those numbers, I also wanted to make sure that we gave you the numbers to operate that facility. So right now, the preliminary estimates are somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million a year. So roughly about $500,000 in increased payroll for the city, and then about $350,000 for electricity, and about $100,000 a year or so for natural gas if we choose to go on the pool heater side. So those are swags based on factual data that we have, but we don't really know until we see what the rates are in 2 years. So we're basing this on looking at FY25.
Now, is that above and beyond what it costs to run the previous
facility?
More or less, yes. This would be increase in payroll, increase in operational facilities, which, are significant compared to the size. Now, in general terms, some of that may be a little less, maybe by 10 to 20%, because we do operate Moose Hope. Currently, Moose Hope doesn't have an HVAC system in it, as an example. So it probably balances out.
All right. So, like I said, the recommendation is to accept the bids with the alternates included. Is anybody opposed to that recommendation? Do we need any further discussion in work session? All right, Barry, do you have any further?
No, I just want to say, I want to echo what Jonathan said. It was a great team effort on behalf of the city staff and the architects and the engineers that worked on this project. We saw a great window of opportunity to get this thing on the street when we did, and it was a scramble to get all the plans pulled together. But it looks like we hit the market at a great time with a good bid package, and I think that the city will reap the rewards for that. I'm appreciative to all the team and what they did.
Yeah.
Staff did a great job, and we couldn't have done it without everybody pulling together and Billy and his team as well. So I just want to say thank you to everybody that's here that helped to do that.
Yeah, certainly. I think it's going to all seem a little anticlimactic. We've been working on this for 5 years probably.
That's right.
So it all nice to see us pulling the trigger on it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Next item on the work session agenda is the water line replacement projects.
I'm going to let Alan and Glenn kind of tell you from the water side what's going on. But if you recall, maybe a year or so ago, when it was announced that we would be receiving a second round of relief funds to the city, it's roughly a little over $6 million that we ended up receiving. We initially felt that based on, I think it was called preliminary final guidance from the Treasury, which is kind of odd, but they said water and sewer projects, if you spend these funds on water and sewer projects, you'll be safe. If you come back and audit, you're more than likely not going to have to repay the federal government those funds. So we looked at what we could do in that realm. There were some water line replacement issues that needed to be done ahead of our street paving project. And so we looked at those. They were significant. And we settled on a number about $2.75 million or so that we felt like we could give the water department to go ahead and do that in advance of resurfacing streets. We also had about $3.5 million of wastewater treatment facility repair upgrades that needed to be done. And so we felt pretty good about that. Well, when the final guidance, that wasn't the preliminary final guidance, finally came out from the Treasury, they said, hey, look, if you've got $10 million, up to $10 million of COVID-related expenses, we're just going to assume every municipality or county had up to $10 million. And so that money then became available to just go into the general fund and be used for whatever purpose the city felt fit to use it on. Those two issues still have not gone away. We still have sewer and water issues. But succinctly, there's no agreement with the water board and the city for those funds. They went to bid on the water line replacement project, and I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $4.5 million to replace those water lines. So what they choose to do in that realm kind of hinges on what you choose to do with those funds. Consequently, the street resurfacing project, though, has significantly been ahead of schedule in terms of meeting your expectations and getting the PCI above a 60. So put that another way, we are not in a rush from the city's viewpoint to pave the streets that are at risk for failure right now. We can manage those in future years, $1 million, $2 million a year into the budget on a street resurfacing plan. So it is not urgent from our perspective. Alan will disagree with you that it's urgent that those things get replaced. But I do want to point out that, at least from my viewpoint, this is a preference of, in other words, people aren't drinking bad water. The lines are at risk to fail, which could cost the city money. We don't know if those lines will fail in 6 months or 6 years, but they're at high risk to fail. And if we go ahead with street resurfacing at some point between now and when they fail, we're going to be cutting up good streets. So
It has not been our practice to pave over a high-risk water line.
that's correct. So I'll let you guys talk about it.
I'll just kind of expand a little bit on what Jonathan said. Alan's got a map here that probably say more than probably what I can say, but it's a map that represents the streets that are actually in this water main project. This is what we're considering to be phase 3 of the water main replacement program that the Water Board has initiated several years ago. The 2 other phases were similar projects. They were addressing mains that were ongoing maintenance issues or services or both. This project also kind of goes hand in hand with the city street resurfacing project. The list that generated not only this list, but the other phases of water main replacement was based pretty much on the city's roadway assessment, and the streets that needed resurfacing were evaluated by the water department, by Alan primarily, and placed in a low, moderate, or high risk situation. We basically are paving low risk streets with low water potential issues for problems, but moderate and high risk streets are put on the priority list for replacement. This phase is part of that. As you see from the map, most of these streets are inside the bypass. Alan chose to use those as this next phase, or phase 3. I'll let him elaborate in just a minute, but just to give you a little more detail, this is approximately 5 miles of water main in this project, and it impacts almost 500 services. So 500 residential services and a few commercial services will be replaced in this project. The bid amount was $4,494,315. The bids were received on October the 6th. The Water Board has tabled this project at the last 2 Water Board meetings, obviously pending the council's review and consideration of the COVID relief funds, because when this project was originally put together and the budget was set, that money was included in the overall budget for this particular project. Is why that is so important. The permitting for the project, ADEM permit has been received and the ALDOT permit is in process. So most of the permitting is done for the project. So the Water Board basically, like I said, is tabled, just pending council review and consideration of this money. At this point, I'll let Alan elaborate a little further on the mains.
Thank you, Glenn. Well, if you look at the center of the map here, that's in your downtown area. Those lines are 120 years old. Those are, of course, we talked about those in our public meeting about and addressed that as far as unlined 120-year-old water mains. As you go further out toward the circle, you'll see more streets there. Those are more galvanized lines that were laid in the 60s, and a lot of your plastic service lines that were put out there in the 70s and 80s that we've had a lot of trouble with. A lot of leakage on these lines, and then if you go south a little bit, you see over in the Grimes Street area, Bellwood or Bell Street area, and then of course you got one street to the west there, Dogwood. When you look at this map, you look out there to the west, and I just want to elaborate on something here. You see Dogwood there by itself. Well, there's one reason for that. That whole west side of that map has never been replaced over the years. That's what some of these we're down to on some of these streets. Getting the rest of these streets replaced. It goes back 25 years of water line replacement. So that's why you see some of these little lines off to the side. It's some of the streets you're going to resurface, and what's left on the general replacement. Got any questions?
So if the city doesn't provide those funds, what options do you have to?
We'd have to reduce the scope of the project, probably by 2/3. Mostly, you would be looking at taking the center of that project out and getting some of the outer line streets, because the inner area is where a lot of your work is at, your old lines and things like that. Be a lot of major work in those areas. The streets outside of that downtown area it'll probably be reduced to those streets, a little bit less.
So does the water board have any option of funding, such as borrowing money, similar as the city has done for projects?
There's always that option, I'm sure. That's always that option. Of course, this is also a lot of this funding, about half of the funding is from the water maintenance fees that we implemented about a year ago. Those funds are in, and a lot of those funds will be used toward this as well.
Alan, these streets, each one of these need the repairs
Yes.
first, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So, and some of these have probably popped up on any previous list that we've had with the paving and got kicked off, possibly. Is that?
These are basically the streets that were given to me as far as what the resurfacing project covered.
Okay.
Maybe some of it is reduced a little bit on some of the streets where there's bad piping, period, for water quality, but most of it is in the street resurfacing project.
I'm just asking because some of these I can visit, I can see the street, and I know that the paving is poor.
That's correct. Most all these streets that are in, not only in this phase, there are multiple other phases of water main replacement, and they all come straight off the streets assessment. And all of them were probably low PCI streets, which Jonathan and I have had this discussion too. Obviously, and it's true that the overall average PCI is more than 60 when we get through with phase 3B paving. But keeping in mind, there are a lot of streets that are low PCIs that have water issues that are not been paved and that are in real bad shape.
Right, we're paving bad streets and pulling our average up. That doesn't mean
that's correct.
That we don't have some streets that still need to be repaved.
That's correct. And obviously those streets, because it's easier to go do paving, you can do that in a 3-month window, but replacing water mains is, in this case, is almost a year-long process for this particular phase. So there's going to be some issues with streets that have not been paved that have water issues that are bad, PCI wise.
How long are these bids good for?
The bids were good for 60 days, which puts it, I think, December the 5th is the 60-day window is up then. I've had some preliminary discussions with the contractor, and he's called me 2 or 3 times because he's looking at other projects. I want to know whether this project's going to be awarded or not, and I understand that. But it is good for 60 days. December the 5th, I think, is that time.
Okay. Which is about 3 weeks from yesterday,
Well, when the water department put this project out for bid, this package that they have, there was many hours put into this project to draw up the plans, etc. And at the time, of course, the water department assumed they were getting the $2.5 million from the city. Now, if that is not the case, the water department could go back and borrow money. But to me, it's an embarrassment to the water department and to the city if you put a project out for bid and you take prices on it, and then you turn around and tell the contractor you don't have money to do it.
Could I make a recommendation to the council as to maybe allow Eugene and one other, I'm certainly willing to do it, to talk to after, in the coming weeks before December 5th, in the next 2 weeks, next week and the following week, talk with Jonathan, Glenn, Alan, other, if water board needs to call a meeting, and then come back to the council with a recommendation. May require that we call a special meeting. But you know, I don't think we're going to solve. I don't think we should solve anything tonight. There's so much information that needs to be gathered. Options need to be explored. I mean, obviously, you know, things have changed since day one of this. You got two different entities, not necessarily, you know, pulling in the same direction all times through no fault of the other. We just got different things going on, different priorities. So, does that sound like is everybody okay with that?
I agree.
That's fine.
Okay. So, Jonathan, you opposed to that? Barry, you think that's a good solution? Okay. All right. Well, then Barry, Jonathan, Alan, Glenn, y'all get together and let us know what we need to do. All right. Next item on our agenda are some legal matters that Rayner needs to discuss in executive session. Needs to give us some legal advice about some pending litigation. I believe that's what is that all we're discussing? Okay, so I will entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss pending litigation.
So move.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We think this will take somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes. There will be no further business conducted in the work session, so we'll return and conduct our regular meeting at 6 o'clock. That's if you don't want to run them, don't put them there. Because then you're gonna have a room full of people in here. Why won't you use what we kind of like the kitchen over at the farmer's market?
That's right.
There we go.
So that was my question. Do we have to, if we award the whole contract, can we go back and take out one of the alternates? If we decide that's right, then later says you might not can. We need,
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've got 6 o'clock. I will now call this meeting of the Enterprise City Council to order. Find my agenda here. Let the record show that all members of the council are present. If you will, please rise for our opening prayer and pledge of allegiance. We have Reverend Belcher here to give us our opening prayer.
Let us pray together. Heavenly Father, as we gather here tonight, we're grateful for this opportunity to share our part, Lord, in the operations of our city and community. And Lord, we recognize our need for your wisdom to be shared with each of us, our mayor, our council, the other employees of the city and beyond. Lord, through your wisdom, we make good decisions. And Lord, you stated to us that if we like wisdom, we need to ask you for it. And Lord, we need your wisdom because we're living in a time that is different from any other time that we many of us have witnessed. Lord, we're concerned because one of the great qualities that you taught us and instilled in us was to have respect each for the other. And Lord, across our great nation, our great state, our cities, Lord, we find every day a lack of respect between one another. And Lord, it's taking its toll on our nation. It's taking its toll on our states. It's taking its toll on our municipalities. And Lord, we need your wisdom to teach us in a new way how to respect each other. And Lord, this disrespect is carrying over into many of our law enforcement officers losing their lives because there's a lack of respect, Lord, in many instances for life itself. So Lord, first give us the wisdom to respect each other, and give us the wisdom, Lord, that we need to fulfill our duties in whatever area it may be. And Lord, we know that we'll have a stronger nation, and we'll have a nation that is more at peace. And Lord, we all long for that. So bless our leaders, protect our leaders, especially our law enforcement, Lord, across this land. And protect our citizens as well. And Lord, as you share your wisdom with us individually, let us not be shy to share that wisdom with others. In the name of Christ Jesus our Lord, we pray. Amen.
amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. All right, Council, you have in your packet the agenda that we discussed. It was distributed last week and discussed in our prior work session. We did just decide to add an item in executive session. So I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted with the additional agenda item at the end of the meeting which is a resolution to ratify and confirm filing of condemnation actions related to airport runway expansion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, to approve the agenda as amended. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll now consider the consent agenda. All matters listed within the consent agenda have been distributed to each member of the council for review, are considered to be routine, and will be enacted by one motion of the city council with no separate discussion. If separate discussion is desired on an item, that item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda by request of a member of the city council. I now call for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion, a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I will now recognize Mayor Cooper and Fire Chief Christopher Davis for the badge pinning of newly promoted Fire Captain Bobby Heiss.
So this is a long time coming. Oh, okay. Come on up, bring it down. Bobby's been with the department for 16 years. He's been a firefighter for 20. He came to us from Ozark, which, side note, his son is graduating rookie school this Friday, so that, and he'll be going into Ozark. Maybe we'll be able to pick him back up too. Bobby's got a great work ethic, and here's the thing: if he looks nervous, one, he hates public speaking. Okay. And he's been on the promotion list like 4 times. All right. Now that means that he's gone all the way, right? So this doesn't mean like he's taken the test 4 times. He's made it. He's been almost there like 4 times. And as the time moves on, the list dies in February, right? So he's been sweating it just a little bit. He knew where he was on the list. But I can tell you hands down that it is very much deserved. Bobby has a fantastic work ethic, and I'm not being disrespectful. His name's Robert. He prefers Bobby because he says Bob is his dad. All right. One of the great things, we're here to pin him, and I would like to state that one of the things that I love about this, whether it's fire, police, EMS, the active family members or loved ones pinning you, in emergency services, and I'm sure that you can also get PD and other emergency services. We can't do what we do without the support of them. That has always been true. For us to be our best, we have to make sure that they're in our corner, and that is, I've never seen that as true with Bobby and his family. Would you like to introduce everybody? I'm sorry, what? No, I mean speak louder. Younger son, Josh. All right, I'll tell you what, you come here. You're definitely with him. All right? You guys come in so that we can get pictures. All right, well, no, let's not go there. That's not how the pinning works.
You're not in front, Josh.
You're going to be right there, stating him, and come on over. And we've left Mayor Cooper completely out. So, for the pinning. He will be the captain on C shift, Eastside Fire Station on Boulevard. Stop by and say hi. It's 1 on, 2 off, so he's not always going to be there. You're welcome. Do you have anything that you would like to say? Yes. Whoa. Honors are, so it's going to do great. Looking forward to it. All right, can we get some pictures of the lovely family here? Anybody? Who has the camera? Yeah, Gary. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Chief, and certainly congratulations. We should never pass up an opportunity to thank our first responders, specifically our firemen that will literally run into a burning building to save us. So thank you very much. All right, moving on to consideration of a permit and street closure request for Main Street Enterprise 2022 Whoville celebration. I'll now call for a motion to approve the following permit request as submitted. 2022 Whoville. The event time is 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And as you can see there, rain date of December 10th. Street closure 7 to 5. The street closure area, East College to Railroad, West College to Edwards, Easy to Edwards Street, and West Cubs to Edwards Street. Street closure 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Closure area on North and South Main from Lee Street to Harrison Street, which has been, that approval has been obtained from ALDOT. So do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we now have the time of the meeting called Privilege of the Floor. This is a time where everyone here tonight is afforded 3 minutes to address the council for anything they deem necessary. I will point out to anyone here to speak to us about short-term rentals or the Economic Development Grant Agreement that is Resolution 11-1522. If you're here to speak to us about either one of those things, short-term rentals or the Economic Development Grant, please save your comments for those public hearings. This time of Privilege of the Floor is for anyone else. Is there anyone here to address the council? Just please state your name clearly into the microphone.
Matt and Jenny Chansey. We're at 502 West Lee Street, and we wanted just to come before the council to just express our thanks as a family, as business owners of Coffee Corner, for this tremendous support that we've received, not only from the business community, but from the city and the council, city employees, Mayor Cooper, Jonathan Tullis, all the members of the council. We've been so encouraged. Of course, it was really nice to see Chief Davis. And I'm personally grateful to the fire department. When the fire happened, I was actually traveling overseas. I was in South Africa visiting my son and daughter-in-law when Jenny called me to tell me that we were losing the business. And I can't imagine how difficult it was, for her to be by herself while watching this happen, but I comforted myself knowing that she was surrounded by some fantastic people. It was one of the best decisions we've ever made to come back to Enterprise, where I was born and raised, and I just wanted to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for all that you've done to help us get back up and running. Scotty, I hope you and Don's mug made it. We're still waiting to see. And Sonia, I'll make sure we get the French press back for you as soon as we can. So thank you all very much. Jenny, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I just want to say especially a big thank you for helping us to open in the coffee truck, which will hopefully be by this weekend, so that we can have this window of the holiday season, because a lot of our income is made during this little 6-week window of the holidays, and it means a whole lot for us just to have that bridge before we can find a place downtown. And it looks like we found the place come into January, but my lips have to be sealed until that's official. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Matt and Jenny, for those kind words, and certainly best of luck. Any other members of the public here that want to take advantage of the privilege of the floor? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to staff reports. Any additional staff reports that are unable to present in our work session? Okay, moving on to old business. We will now have a public hearing and consideration of ordinance 110122A regarding the regulation of short-term rentals. So just give everybody some ground rules here. I know we've got some members of the public here for this public hearing, so just give everybody a heads up of how things are going to go. So we're going to open the public hearing, then we're going to call upon staff to come forward to present the ordinance that's been introduced and potentially answer some questions from council. Then we're going to allow any members of the general public to voice their support or opposition of the ordinance. Then we will close the public hearing and move to council consideration of the ordinance. A few ground rules for our public hearings. This is a public hearing during a regular council meeting of the Enterprise City Council. We're here to conduct business in an orderly manner, and we expect the attendees to respect the proceedings. One person will speak at a time. Please give the person who is speaking the same courtesy you expect when it is your time to speak. Outbursts from the audience will not be tolerated. After you are recognized by me to speak, please come forward and speak directly into the microphone. Please make sure all comments are directed at the council, as we will be the ones making the decision. Under no circumstances should comments be directed to anyone other than the council. Please attempt to refrain from repeating the same points that have previously been made so as to keep the proceedings moving as efficiently as possible. Then after the hearing is closed and council deliberations begin, there will be no more comments from the audience. So we will declare this public hearing open, and I will call upon staff to present the ordinance and address any known concerns. And so please include a brief history of how we got to tonight. And then the council's probably going to have some questions. I know I have a few questions, so we can get some things out of the way.
So, council members, Mayor, for at least the last year, maybe a little bit longer, we've talked about short-term rentals in Enterprise. When it first came up, we had several public hearings regarding people addressing the council, concerned initially about short-term rentals in the community, but also a lot of people in support of them. And so as that developed, I think it was October, November, and December of 2021, you asked us to look at, what do we have on the books? We didn't have anything on the books that recognized short-term rentals by definition in Enterprise. We didn't know what category really for zoning purposes that should fall under, where it was permitted, if it was permitted. We didn't really have any way to answer your questions that you had. So initially you charged us to get something to the Planning Commission to address zoning in an ordinance to you to authorize short-term rentals. What I heard, what staff understood, is that you wanted to have short-term rentals. You wanted to err on the side of property rights, and that if we had rules on the books already, for instance, noise ordinances, that we didn't need to outline those specifically in a short-term rental ordinance. People could just, call the police and we would enforce current ordinances on the books. So with all of that in mind, we tried going through the Planning Commission, and we realized that we were doing this KPS, comprehensive plan, zoning regulations, and we continued to march on. The biggest factor for staff was we had no way to recognize who was operating a short-term rental property in Enterprise or in the police jurisdiction. We also they didn't get a business license as a result of that, and by not having a business license, they could not remit lodging tax, which was already on the books as an ordinance that technically the short-term rental community was in violation of by not remitting it. So we erred on the side of the taxpayer and said, talking to Mayor Cooper, we're not going to collect any lodging tax or do it kind of haphazardly. We're going to wait until we get an ordinance, define what that looks like, and have a clear way for somebody that's operating a short-term rental to remit property taxes to the city before we do that. So, I'm sorry, lodging tax. Thank you. So we worked on that. Leanne and her staff, along with Thomas and Barry Mott, to look at what that looked like. We had several iterations. I look back over my notes, even today, based on Councilwoman Rich's phone call. I think we had 2 drafts back one in October and one in December that was sent to you of last year, and you opted to go back to the drawing board, and so that's what we did. And we presented this to you at the last council meeting that kind of addressed a good first draft of what we thought, taking best business practices from some other communities in the state, that addressed it. Did we get it 100% right? I doubt it. But we gave it a good try to document that based on the information we had from you. It went to public review, and here we are. We've obviously got some people in attendance tonight that have some concerns. We've heard through emails from each of you and through the mayor's office some of those concerns. We're happy to talk about those tonight, but we're also happy to make changes at your direction.
Yeah. All right. So I did my best to compile a list of questions, both of my own and questions that have come about through emails that I know have been sent to me and to various members of the council, to hopefully get ahead of some of the questions we're gonna have later on. But and then I would encourage my colleagues on the council to ask anything that I leave out. So first question is really 2 parts. How will this ordinance, or when will this ordinance go into effect if approved? And then how long will currently operating STRs have to be in compliance with this ordinance approved? In other words, practically speaking, how's it rolled out?
Yeah. So technically speaking, the minute you adopt it, it would be enacted and enforceable. And we may need to codify that by changing the ordinance to read as such. But the intent would be starting January 1, just like normal business licenses here at the city, that people would have between January 1 and I think the late date is February 15th to get a business license. And that would be kind of what we would typically look at. So that would be the intent under this ordinance. Give public enough notification whenever if you adopted it tonight or at a future time.
So practically so there's some, in the initial rollout, obviously there's going to be a lot more work on everybody than with just renewals and just handling new businesses as they come on. I think there's 180-ish already in operation that we know about. Could that be accomplished between January 1 and February, or from an inspection standpoint?
Yeah, it could be. City handles a lot more than 180, but citywide. But realistically, a lot of this is done on an affidavit, certified by the property owner. So we're essentially, putting the risk back on them that they've certified that these conditions are met. So yes, I think that it could reasonably be done.
So are there plans to provide detailed instructions or documents on the city website, or at least available at City Hall?
That would be the intent, yes, sir.
Why would short-term residential rentals fall under Schedule L in the business license schedule, and what is the current annual amount? Why did we choose Schedule L?
So it shouldn't be Schedule L. It should probably be Schedule K. And Schedule K deals.
You got that, Beverly?
With accommodation.
Schedule K deals with food and accommodations, and the Schedule L, which apparently was just a typo in there, that deals with arts and entertainment. So it really should not have been under Schedule L, but it would. Thank you. It would go to Schedule K.
Okay, so what would the annual amount, business license amount be?
It's the same. Actually, the percentage amount, I don't have it in front of me right this second, but the percentage amount on Schedule K is the same as Schedule L.
So there would be no impact to the calculation. It was Practically, it was going to be around $100, right?
Yes, the base. Yes.
Base.
Mhm.
Then plus $20 per minute.
Per additional units. Yes.
Okay. All right. What are the so in at least two places, continuing safety regulations are referenced in the ordinance. My assumption is that means that they are simply affirming through an affidavit that they continue to follow the guidelines set forth in the ordinance.
That's correct. We're not trying to impose any additional or be too overbearing.
There'll be a checklist to follow. They'll check, sign saying all this has been accomplished.
The affidavit that we're going to come up with is going to be a collaboration between revenue, the fire department, police department, to make sure that anything that needs to be addressed from each of those aspects, safety and health and safety aspects, is addressed on there. So everyone will have some input on that, and it'll be one affidavit that'll be for everybody to attest to.
And it'll probably be in the form of a checklist.
Yes.
All right. Are these lodging taxes new taxes? I know the answer to this.
No, they're not new taxes, and I don't have the ordinance. Leanne might. Yeah, so 11-17-09. So it was adopted in 2009. 6% lodging tax at the city.
So any taxes referenced in the ordinance are simply translating the taxes currently in effect, and they're copying them to this ordinance.
And in the police jurisdiction, those taxes.
Yeah, that was my next question. Why is the police jurisdiction less?
Police jurisdiction is half of the rate.
By state law.
By state law.
Yeah. So that out of our control. That's state law.
Correct.
So how will short-term rental owners and operators file and remit city lodging taxes?
So
they would create an account through OneSpot, which is through the state, and they would remit those there every month. Taxes are due for the month you collect them. So if you're collecting rents in the month of November, then your taxes are due by the 20th of the following month. But they would go online and create an account on OneSpot. And the payment methods, there are whatever payment options are available through OneSpot.
It's exactly like every other
Correct.
business in town that does retail and collects and remits sales taxes, or hotels and accommodations that collect and remit lodging taxes.
Yes.
Exactly the same way. Okay. Rainer, this question's for you concerning the seems to be some confusion created by this Alabama Supreme Court ruling in the context of commercial use in regards to short-term rentals. It seems like a lot of people take that and try to make other assumptions.
Yeah, so that case specifically dealt with restrictive covenants in a subdivision. Anybody that stayed a short-term rental, which I've enjoyed doing that, I think they're good, knows it's a business. And there's no prohibition by the Alabama Supreme Court or any law in the state of Alabama against treating, for purposes of licensing and the remission of taxes, a short-term rental as a business. I feel confident that Stone Marble case is not at all applicable to what we're doing here.
That was in the context of restrictive covenants.
That's exactly right.
Okay. In other words, if somebody had something in their restrictive covenants in their neighborhood that said that a residence can't be used for commercial use,
right,
that in itself does not prohibit short-term rentals.
That's exactly right.
But it does not prohibit
Absolutely.
cities and counties and any other municipalities from regulating short-term rentals, as evidenced by probably every city bigger than Enterprise regulates.
You said it better than me.
Okay. Section 7, additional conditions. So Greg discussed this a little bit last meeting, but do y'all have some examples of reasonable conditions that are in addition to the requirements of this ordinance that might be imposed by the police chief, fire chief, or engineering department?
I mean, I can ask if Chief Moore or Chief Davis have some of those. I imagine they are concerned with things that maybe they get complaints about parking on both sides of the street or need to open up for emergency access, and they say, hey, you guys need to get these cars off the street. They can do that anyway.
I was about to say, I mean,
yeah.
Don't they currently have
I
the
think
ability to enforce
They
an
do.
unsafe.
they do. And so, there's not a lot of heartache whether that stays or goes. I think the intent, moreover, was, if there are things that deal with safety, whether it's code enforcement or other things that the council, state, or federal government might adopt, that we don't necessarily always have to go back to the council to amend the ordinance, that it would comply and absorb those conditions.
Okay. So in section 9, safety precautions, it says it says a list of procedures that are being referenced. My assumption is that's emergency procedures in the event of an emergency. So maybe just some clarification added there. Section 9. It just says list of procedures instead of. Okay. We'll skip. There were some questions about commercial vehicles, but what would staff's definition of commercial? I know there's a definition in the ordinance of commercial vehicle.
I'm not sure. We talked about that today, reading back through it with the city attorney and with Leanne, and I'm not really sure that we have a good reason to leave that provision in there.
Okay.
To be honest with you.
All right, section 10D, which is a 60-minute response. So can we get a little insight into the rationale for this requirement? We changed it from 15 to 60. And then I got to thinking, do they have to physically respond or just communicate, just acknowledge that they're aware of the problem?
So when we looked at that today and had that discussion, I think it references more the tenant. So it would be is that not how you interpret it?
Section 10D says that the operator shall make available a local 24-hour phone number that provides the capability of producing a response within 60 minutes. So I think that implies, since the phone number is of the operator's representative.
Right.
So the requirement would be that the operator or some representative responds
Right.
within 60 minutes.
But I think it's for the tenant to reach the operator. I think that is the intent.
Well, it says, regarding the condition, operation, or conduct of the occupants. So if it's the conduct of the occupants, the implication there was that maybe that's the police chief or the fire chief.
I don't know. Rainer,
What we've always intended that to me is, if you've got a busted water pipe that's flooding the place, if you've got a toilet that's overflowing and flooding the place, things of that nature that need an immediate response, that the occupant would be able to have a number to call, just as you would call the manager of the hotel that's on duty if you are having some emergency that way. It was not intended to be, nor do I think it would be enforced in a manner that would be like the short-term rental police need to be called or anything like that.
Yeah, I think the concern there is at 3 a.m. on Christmas Eve, a pipe burst, and the response isn't until 7 a.m. and now they're getting fined $500 or been pulled into municipal court. I think that's the concern. I hear the intent now.
You can get somebody 24 hours a day in the front desk.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, okay. Well, I think we can discuss that.
If you think we need to extend out, broaden the time, I mean, I think we can do that.
Yeah, I think we can discuss maybe a balanced approach to that. Any other questions from the council before we? I tried to cover everything that I knew everybody had been sent.
How are you planning on this? Like, if we got some concerns, or we just kind of go.
So we're about to. So we're about to. Does staff have anything else? So what we'll do now is we'll allow any members of the general public to come. They'll say what they want. Then we'll close the hearing, and of course, as always, we'll go into a period of discussion. And then, of course, our options are going to be to adopt. We can adopt tonight as introduced 2 weeks ago. We can lay it over to consider at a later date, as soon as December 6th. We can make some changes tonight and adopt tonight by suspending our rules. I don't necessarily recommend that because of the the lack of urgency. And then we can choose to do nothing and just move forward. So those are our options. Does that answer your question, Sonny?
Can
Okay.
I get clarification on?
Yep.
Earlier there was about the business license. So did I understand you to say that? So if an owner has 5 locations, they get 1 business license and then a $20 permit per location.
Anybody else have any questions for staff? Of course, you'll have an opportunity to bring them back up if something else comes. All right. Thank you, staff. Jonathan and Leanne. All right. We'll now allow any members of the general public to voice their support or opposition to the ordinance, including any specific concerns they feel the council should take into consideration. Speakers are to be reminded to direct all comments and questions directly to the council. Questions will be answered after the close of the public hearing if the council chooses. So I know some of you may have questions. We will write those down. And if we choose to have those answered, we'll get those answered, because we likely will not be the ones with those answers. So please don't get offended if we do not answer. So, all right, so we'll attempt to do this in an orderly way. So if I could see a raise of hands of anybody who wants to address the council. All right, yes, ma'am, over here. Yes. Okay. Please, if you could state your name. Can you?
Don't dock my 3 minutes for spelling
No,
my name.
well, you're not on the clock, but could you please speak? There's people online watching. They cannot.
P-I-C-C-I-N-I.
Your name again, please?
Cheryl Piccinini.
Yep. And I'm sorry, but please speak into the. I'm sorry.
Can you
Thank
hear me?
Yes.
Okay, now the clock can go. Just for record,
No, you're not on the clock.
I'm not opposed
You're not on the
to
clock.
the ordinance. I just think that we need a distinction of taxation. We've got a state defines their lodging tax by less than 180 days. However, there is no clear legal definition by the state of what a short-term rental is. They've left that to the municipalities to decide. So having said that, we've got Florida and Delaware are the only other states that say as short-term residence or rental is 180 days or less. The remaining 20 states that have that on the books are 90 days or less, and the majority of them are 30. And I've got a list of that. Having said that, the short-term rental phenomena here started basically when we were able to reimburse military, federal travel with, the ones using Airbnb, so to speak. I've looked through the major cities outside of other military bases. We have a very unique dynamic here because a lot of our clientele, the short-term rentals, are military linemen and traveling medical professionals. If you go back and you look at Norfolk Naval Air Station Norfolk or Fort Eustis, 90 days or less is how they define a short-term rental, and that's what bed tax is placed on. Fort Bragg, which is Airborne Special Operations, 90 days or less. Fort Campbell, Fayetteville, 30 days or less, home of the 101st. Fort Hood is 0. They don't have anything on the books. There's no bed tax applied. Fort Stewart, Hunter Army Airfield, Savannah, high tourism, home of 3rd ID, 30 days or less. Anything above that's not, lodging tax is not applied. Fort Benning, Georgia, which is Columbus, I believe, 30 days or less. Fort Lewis, Washington, that's Seattle, Tacoma, Olympia, 30 days or less. Fort Riley, Kansas, 28 days or less. And then you got Fort Rucker, Enterprise, home of Army Aviation, 180 days or less. So we are taxing them, applying a lodging tax to anything 6 months or less, which is high compared to the other major cities surrounding military bases. When you combine that with the fact that our locality tax is higher, 95% higher than most, we're putting this on the backs of the people that we want coming in here. In Alabama, 30 days, once they cross that 30-day mark, technically they do have tenant rights and they're no longer transient in nature. Anything above 90 days, that's significant. They're not transient. And I think I don't have an issue with the lodging tax 30 days or less. Even 90 days or less do a discounted rate. But anything over 90 days, now we're touching into those traveling medical professionals, Captain's Career Course, Maintenance Test Pilot Course, AIT, NCO Academy. We're really putting that on the TDY rentals, basically. And that's being attached to our military. And I just don't think that's what Enterprise is about. I think if we stay in line with what the other major cities surrounding these military installations are doing, I think that would be great. And take that burden off the military. Because in essence, they're the ones paying that lodging tax. That's all I'm asking for is a distinction of that taxation in less than 180 days.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, who else was wanting to speak?
Hello, I'm
Hey.
Kara Catrett, and I manage one short-term rental here in Enterprise. Thank you so much for letting us come and speak to you tonight. There were a couple of things in particular that really just sort of grabbed me when I read the proposed ordinance, and I wanted to just speak to you all about that. Let me start by saying that I manage short-term rentals in Tennessee, Alabama, and Florida. And I've been doing this for 15 years. And so I've had quite a bit of experience with different municipalities and the way that they approach short-term rentals and the regulation process. There's one point in particular. I will say that this ordinance is definitely the most detailed and possibly even restrictive one that I have encountered in 15 years, but also the most threatening in a way. And I'll elaborate on that by saying there's a section where it says that we can be, for a violation of any of the restrictions in the ordinance, that we can be fined $500 and or 30 days imprisonment for any infraction. And that seems a little excessive to me. It kind of seems like the same effect of killing a gnat with a bazooka. So I'd like to offer as a contrast to that, for example, I have a short-term rental in Nashville, Tennessee. And of course you want to have consequences for people who violate the restrictions of the ordinances. In Nashville, for example, if I were to violate one of their ordinances, they would immediately notify VRBO, Airbnb, and any other platform website where I advertise. That platform would and they would notify, just say Airbnb, for example, they would notify them that I had violated their ordinance, and that platform would then be able to pull my listing so that I would not be able to advertise online. Furthermore, I would not be allowed to advertise a short-term rental property in the city of Nashville for a full 12 months as a penalty for violating their ordinances. So to me, that is a very fair and a consequence-appropriate response to the violation. I don't want to, I'm not sure that I want to encounter or feel the threat of a $500 and or imprisonment if inadvertently something, I don't know, if I've got Gladys Kravitz for a neighbor and she really has a bee in her bonnet about having a short-term rental next door and, standing out there and going, I don't know, just any kind of violation she can dream of, and accuse me of. So anyway, that was one thing that I wanted to be real specific about, and I think several of us are a little alarmed by that threat in the ordinance. The other thing I had was in the form of a question, just for clarification. As I said, I've dealt with multiple municipalities, and so it's very, it's pretty standard practice at this point to have an inspection by the fire department to make sure that there are appropriate safety measures, enough smoke detectors in the right rooms, the correct size of egress points in the case of a fire and so forth, that sort of thing. That's pretty standard. In your proposed ordinance, it mentions inspections by the engineering department and the fire department. So my question is, what sort of inspections would the engineering department be doing, and how in-depth would those inspections be? For example, are they going to come out and check my plumbing and electrical and see that, the roof shingles are in good shape, and if there are any dripping pipes? And, I'm just curious about how extensive the engineering part of that would be. Are they going to make sure that we're ADA compliant on everything, that we've got to have a ramp if there are steps and that sort of thing? So I guess that's my question and concern, because I've never, in any of the other municipalities, I've never seen an engineering department inspection listed as a requirement. So anyway, I just appreciate, you letting us come up and air our concerns and questions about that. And we really appreciate you working with us, because I think clarity equals more compliance, and we all want to be more compliant, because our concern is to present ourselves in a professional manner that would shed a positive light on short-term rentals, because we want to be good neighbors. All of us here tonight are really concerned about being good neighbors and making a good impression and being welcome in the neighborhoods. Yep. So thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, who else is here to speak tonight? Anyone else? Yes.
Hi, my name is Iris Waters. I want to thank you for the opportunity to come and speak tonight. We only have one short-term rental in town, but we have been managing 33 long-term rentals for several years in town. And I know you already addressed the 24-hour thing, but I just wanted to very briefly shed light from an owner's perspective of the 24-hour policy. Is that, the people that choose to book short-term rentals chose not to stay in a hotel. That was their choice. They chose not to have a 24-hour attendant on hand, on staff. So to me, it seems more like it could be compared to a long-term rental. And I don't know any long-term rental that requires you to have a 24-hour person on staff. Should you have a phone number that they can contact? Yes. Most of the platforms require you to have a phone number that you can contact. I don't know anyone that doesn't require you, to have that contact on hand. But as you mentioned with the Christmas and other things, having someone available within an hour or even within 3 hours or any kind of specific time constraint like that seems like an above and beyond requirement above what the platforms already require you to do. And as mentioned previously, there are requirements on these platforms to be an owner, to have your advertisement out there. And if you're not responding to your tenants appropriately, then you're not going to have a listing on these platforms, you're not going to advertise, and you're not going to have any residents. So I just want you to consider, please, the burden that puts on an owner to be able to perform that duty. I can tell you, what if you're an owner, you got kids at home? I can't leave my kids to go to the short-term rental at 3 o'clock in the morning. So just thank you for your consideration.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Waters. Anybody else? Anybody else? One more call. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Johanna Pankuch, and I own one short-term rental here. With the ADA compliance, I have a child with special needs. He's in a wheelchair. The home that I rent would never be able to be ADA compliant. However, the platforms do allow us an opportunity to prove if we're ADA compliant or we're not. And so I do not list mine as ADA compliant. So people have an option to choose that home or not based on their needs. And I think that having an ADA compliant home for all sorts of things would be amazing. But we are able to advertise and prove that we're ADA compliant on our platforms. I also live in on-post housing that is an ADA home, and it does not meet the requirements that my child needs with his wheelchair. And it is ADA compliant. However, again, it's the hallways are not even wide enough for his chair. So we carry him everywhere. Just a food for thought. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right. So we'll now close the public portion of the hearing and move to council discussion. First of all, I didn't see anything in the ordinance referencing ADA compliance. That was brought up twice. Thomas, Jonathan, y'all concur? Okay. So I guess we'll what questions does everyone have? We can just have some general discussion.
You want us to go? You looking over here?
If you have anything, go ahead, Sonia.
I remember saying when we first started talking about this that I wanted to see an ordinance that really just gave people instruction on how they needed to remit their taxes and be clear on how we would be able to collect them and not do a whole bunch of other stuff that we already have ordinances for. So having said that, I did highlight a few things that some of the ladies have touched on that came up. One, I don't like this, the 180 days. I didn't have that highlighted at first, but I agree with Miss Cheryl's suggestion there. I thought that we discussed them not paying for multiple properties, that they would pay one business license fee and not, when we first start talking, but I guess we could talk about that some more, but I thought we did discuss that already to not do that, that's not what this number 5 says. If I had to suggest, I would suggest to scratch. I'm reading my notes, so bear with me. To scratch 7, and I just don't like that at all. I just think that we need an ordinance that can simply say that we need to just operate with what we already have. Basically, whatever language what ordinances that we have related to fire safety, noise ordinance, trash, picking up the trash is the same thing. We already got that stuff in place. I don't see why we need to just fine tune all of that when we already got that stuff together. I did want to know what the current requirement is for 9C about the smoke alarm shall be present in all sleeping rooms, outside of bedrooms on every level of the home. I'm not sure that I have that in my own home, so I'm just wondering, is that necessary or is that the current requirement?
Chief, would you like to respond to that?
And also about this record of monthly testing, how is that going to look and is that necessary? And how y'all going to verify that?
The monthly testing, that was in that when it was presented to me. The idea of it, and this is my perspective, is that because this is a short-term rental, they're not going to be there for very long. The importance of having a smoke detector, I can't stress that enough. You guys know how I feel about that. But without that testing or some kind of log of battery test or testing it to make sure that it works, obviously that's a concern to me. I don't hang out or spend a lot of time with short-term rentals. That may be something that they do, but we have no control over that or say in that, right? As far as checking it, I can tell you that unless there's an issue or an ongoing issue, it's not something that we're going to be running around every single month to check whether they tested their smoke detector.
They're just
that
going to be
goes back
signing
to the
an
affidavit.
They're going to be signing an affidavit saying
Correct.
that they have tested it.
Yes.
So if we brought you a blank slate, if you had drafted the ordinance, what would the frequency of testing have been?
Well, the testing would be at least once a month, and then changing the batteries twice a year.
So what in a situation, it was brought up that maybe there's a military person that's here for 90 days, 120 days. Are you saying that the owner of that property needs to go in while that tenant is staying there during that period and interrupt their daily operation and go check all of these smoke detectors on a monthly basis?
I can only attest to the importance of making sure that we have working smoke detectors.
I
If
think
they utilize that
I would
through the
prefer to
tenant,
see it say something along the lines that, check out of that tenant or something when they're doing their cleaning or something like that. But that could be wide open to whatever people want to put on there.
Sure.
But
Yes.
What else you got, Sonia?
each level of the home you had mentioned, I don't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay.
The smoke detectors are actually, as far as smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors, that's IBC. All right, every level of the home, inside of each bedroom, outside of bedroom areas, carbon monoxide detectors in homes that have an attached garage or fuel burning appliances. Those are from IBC, International Building Code, or excuse me, IRC, International Residential Code, which is more, in fairness, Thomas's expertise than mine, even though we're talking about smoke detectors. The exact wording from that I wanted to see there, because that's the bare minimum recommendation from NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association. And again, if I'm given the opportunity to try to push something towards safety, I'm going to do it every time. It's not going to hurt my feelings if you choose not to. But when given the opportunity, I'm going for the safest route.
All right.
That answered that part. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
What else you got, Sonia?
I also highlighted about this commercial vehicles parking. I don't agree with that. Someone can work and drive a commercial vehicle. Their job can provide it with a commercial vehicle to drive. That's crazy to me. It was something else I noted. I don't really like this. What number is it? 10G. I don't think we should be dictating forms of gathering. I think that these platforms give specific instruction and direction as to what can be done in the homes. And if they're not in compliance, then the owners, I'm sure they have a penalty to pay for that. But I don't know what how we would be able to determine what is typically held. I think it says something about weddings, parties, receptions, or similar events that are typically held at a banquet facility. Well, how do we know that a wedding, a party, or a reception is typically held at a banquet facility? It could be held in somebody's backyard. It could have a wedding in somebody's den. I think that these platforms are designed, that I've read, I've looked, they should be living in good taste, not doing things that would be disruptive to neighbors. And if they don't, then I think they have penalties to pay. So I just think we need to, I think we need to keep in mind what these rental platforms already have in place. There are penalties that are in place for violations. And I think my last little note was about the enforcement in number 13. I just think that's kind of extreme. So if I had to vote on the ordinance as is, with no discussion or correction, it would probably be a no from me.
Eugene?
Well, I disagree with Sonia on the G part, where it would say that the rental property should not be used for wedding, parties, receptions, and events. I don't think that's the purpose of a short-term rental, and I kind of like that section G as is. I do understand where the lady was talking about the 180 days compared to all these other places. Maybe that's something that we should look at. Looking back at your suggestions of section 7, I agree with strike that. in the commercial vehicles. Other than that, I think that's about all that I see specifically.
Okay, Greg.
I'm gonna also chime in on that 180-day thing. If our other military base cities are not doing that, we should try to come in line with what is reasonable for the other ones, other military bases areas. Some of my questions were answered as we went through, so let me quickly get through here. As Sonia said earlier, and the reason I wanted clarification earlier on the business license, I do recall that we had discussed one business license per owner and then just issuing a license that would not have any fee assigned to it for the additional locations. This is actually a permit fee, so it's different than business license, and I don't recall that as being part of what we were going to send back to staff. $20 a unit, I don't guess annually is that big of a deal. I wouldn't vote no just on that one line, but it is something we discussed back in November, December of last year, that we were only going to have one license per owner. I do have a question on the insurance. It looks like it's requiring two separate insurances here. $1 million rider on the homeowner's policy and then $1 million commercial. Is there anybody that could answer why the requirement of two separate insurance policies would be there?
What section is that?
Some of my numbers got a little off when I put this into Word. I think it's 6.
That's not in the
Okay, well, the one I was sent by email.
The ordinance that was introduced 2 weeks ago, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, does not have any minimum
nothing on insurance
policy requirements. Okay. Right, Rainer and Jonathan?
I looked at it again today. I didn't see that.
Okay, the version I was sent in a Word document had it in there.
Yeah, I think it did initially.
Okay.
And then
all right, good.
The only requirement is that they have proof of current property insurance, which may include declarations, information, or summary pages from the policy.
Okay.
So just saying we can, yeah.
I was
Jonathan,
going
did you
back
have
and
a
forth
question
between
on
my
that?
Word document and that, so
I was just going to address Councilman Padgett's comment about, I guess, discussion on permit fees. So what staff brought back was that at least one, maybe more of the council, when you discussed what came up was, hey, if I had, two Townsend Building Supplies or two Goolsby Plumbing and Electric locations, I'd have to pay a business license at each location. So we didn't get the message quite as clear as, just one. So that's why it was written that way, as sort of a compromise between, the two instances.
But we would need a permit for each location, just so there's a catalog, right?
That was the compromise, instead of requiring a business license per location.
One business license.
Right.
And then,
So, but like I said, this is all what we drafted based on, a lot of input from a lot of different parties. So, like I said, this probably is not a perfect solution, which is why we're here discussing it tonight. Hopefully we can make some changes to get it back before you, but we just want clear direction on kind of which direction, each one of you want us to go.
I honestly think it's a fair compromise. Personally, I just was addressing the fact that it didn't seem to line up with what my recollection.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And
were.
I just wanted to make sure that you understood why the staff wrote it that way.
Okay. I also would like to see that Section 7 removed, as both, I think everybody so far
everybody has.
Now you got me wondering if the stuff that I have on this list is still in the ordinance. Under safety precautions, does it have a requirement on the ordinance that was actually presented for a map to be put in every single room?
Yeah.
The sleeping rooms, right?
That's 9A.
9A.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So it says an evacuation map and list of procedures, which we need to say emergency procedures shall be placed within each guest room for use for sleeping. Maps and list of procedures, safety procedures, or emergency procedures shall be mounted on a wall or door in a horizontal position. So yes, each
Okay.
sleeping room.
Personally, to me, that seems a little excessive for a home. I could see it in a hotel, but it seems a little excessive for a home. I've stayed in many short-term rentals. Never seen that before. There's always been either one posted at the entrance of the house, or more commonly, I've seen where they have a book with all of the rules of the house, and in there is the evacuation for review.
Chief Davis, you want to advocate for or not?
That's not the part that I was going to be advocating for, to be honest with you. Obviously, again, when given the opportunity, I'm going on the realm of safety. The one part of that I thought could be confusing was actually the listing of safety procedures. The primary concern was making sure that somebody who had not been in an area or location for a long amount of time would know how to get out. That being a map, you are here, this is the quickest exit route, and then should you need it, these are the fire extinguishers that you would be passing as you got out. Just again, if it's somebody's first night or second night. So to be honest, that was in there when I received it. Obviously, do not have a problem with it. It goes along with all of our fire prevention sayings, what we teach everybody. As far as the procedures, I think that was a little bit more difficult. Are the safety procedures on fire extinguishers and how to use them, the importance of getting out of a house, which if it's on fire, I'm pretty sure you're going to be quite motivated. But the map itself, I do believe, is important, especially in the sleeping areas where you may hopefully have a barrier between you and the threat, and giving you the opportunity to see what the quickest way out of it.
Okay. What else, Greg?
Also, I'd like to see the commercial vehicle section removed out of there because, as was already been stated, many people come here on work vehicles that might have a logo on the side, and that could be considered a commercial vehicle, even though it's a standard, maybe a standard size. I could see that maybe if you're talking about backing a semi truck up into a neighborhood, that'd be different. But also would like to see changes made to the section about the local 24-hour phone. I know we said 60 minutes, but I still don't like that section. And
what about reasonable time, or replace the language with?
Because I still keep reading that section that says, or the conduct of the occupant. So it really feels to me more like the police want to be able to contact someone that owns the home about what's going on in that location. So it really feels like that whole section is talking about the city being able to contact the operator, not the tenant. I think that whole section needs to be totally reworded in a different manner so that it is clear to what the intent actually is. If it is for this, the police, the fire to reach the owner, that's fine. I don't mind something being in there for that.
Well, so it's already in there in another section.
Well, that's what I thought.
Yeah, requiring it actually details the font and or the size.
But I just think you could real generically say, within a reasonable time frame. And if that becomes a consistent problem, then we can always come back to the council and fix that at some point.
Can I clarify why that's important? Perhaps maybe help you a little bit. While we request a 60-minute at least, is if we got to the resident, it's really for the protection of the homeowner, not really for the occupant in case they're a nuisance or a problem, whatever else. If we get to a residence and they're using it for illegal means, and we have to shut it down, make an arrest, whatever we have to do, and clear all the occupants out, what are we to do with that house? Right? Do we keep it unsecured? Do we just walk away from it? It becomes our problem, becomes everybody else's problem of how do we secure that residence? If something bad happens out of there, how do we notify the people that own the house except calling during the hours to find out who got their license or whatever else, or permit or whatever for that residence? So the 60-minute thing is really, in my opinion, when I read the law, the proposed ordinance, is how do we protect the owner of the residence on making contacts in case of emergency?
Well, like I think my big concern on that is the fact that it says shall constitute a violation of this ordinance. If all you're trying to do is for the safety of that homeowner, they don't answer, that's on them for not answering. And then their property is just like it would be if it's a long-term
But
rental.
it's still, once we get there, Mr. Pageant, we take custody of that residence, whether it's a fire department, police department, it becomes the city's problem. So if they refuse to answer the phone, we sit there and have to secure that residence. We have to be there until it's properly turned over to somebody else, because it becomes our responsibility and our liability.
Is that what y'all do now if you go to a private residence, it's not a rental, and you remove all occupants in the
We
middle
have
of
to
the night?
find out a way that we can secure that residence. If it's a homeowner, if it's a tenant of a landlord, we have to make contact with the landlord prior to releasing it.
Even on a long-term.
Even on the long term, if it's a rental of a residence, and we have to remove, and I'm talking about worst case, I hate to bring anything up, but in the event that we have to, on a search warrant, whatever else, and we find out they're using it for illegal means, we contact the landlord, the homeowner of that residence, and say, this is what we have. Is there a way that we can secure it? If we don't, then we have to wait till we find somebody or secure it ourselves, which sometimes, unfortunately, when we talk about search warrants, we have to knock the door down. If we do that, we are still liable for that residence, and we have to secure that residence. And I say we, by proxy, it's the city.
Yeah, I still have a concern with it being a violation of the ordinance and taking it all the way over here to a $500 fine and putting them in jail. if they don't
we can
respond.
agree. The reasoning for it, I agree with that.
Well, I
that's
think there may be some middle ground to get his concern.
There- There has to be a way that we can contact somebody
Absolutely.
within a reasonable.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's
like Chief
advocating.
Davis said, I'd rather have them 15 minutes so I can go back, to the streets. But that's not feasible whenever somebody lives out of town. But I think 60 minutes, and you can read that and decide if it's a phone call and say, hey, this is what we need. Well, it's going to give me, you got to give me 2 hours because I'm coming from Panama City, or is it, whatever. But we got to be able to make contact with somebody within a reasonable amount of time, and if we don't, then we've got an issue. So.
Got anything else, Greg?
Yeah, Sonia had mentioned about the use. I know we discussed this back in November of last year, that there's a lot of families that come in for graduations, for military graduations, and they, have their family over to have a party. I think there needs to be some clarification in here that if they wanted to come in for their soldier's graduation party, or they wanted to come in for their soldier and have a birthday party, that's not a violation of this. I don't mind us restricting some things, but, we certainly don't want, 100 attendee wedding showing up and the streets clogged with cars all up and down it. I get the need for something in here, but we also got to be careful that we're not, because we are such a military town, there are people that I specifically know come into town now for graduations, or come in for birthday of their soldier and want to have a small party at the house. And I think it just needs to be clarified so someone doesn't feel like they're going to be, hauled off to 30 days in jail because they had a small, 10-person birthday party or a graduation party there.
And if I could piggyback on that, that's exactly what I probably didn't say it very well, but that's exactly what I was saying. Even not in the case of the military, but I know people, residents of Enterprise, that say they have something's going on in their house and they got a contractor that's got to come out. They had something planned that's going on at their house, and so, oops, we've sent out invitations for this baby shower that's going to be held here at my house, and my roof is cutting up, so I gotta get an Airbnb so we can give this baby these gifts, blah blah blah. So they get an Airbnb. That's what I'm just saying. To me, that's just a little nit to what Greg's point is. That's what I meant by that when I brought it up. Not necessarily about all parties, just some things.
The last thing is I think the violations, the example that was given of how Nashville handles it about notifying the platforms of violation. for suspension and not allowed to advertise at Airbnb for 12 months might be a better solution than $500 per violation. Or if we even leave the fine on $500, I don't see anything in this ordinance that I personally feel is worth 30 days in jail over. I just can't. I can't vote for an ordinance of this nature that would put somebody in jail for 30 days for anything I see in this ordinance.
So, Rainer, you see that in just about any. It's almost boilerplate at this point. I mean, I would assume it's in our speeding ordinance.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
why
it's
is
a-
that
it's-
always?
It's standard for what's called a violation. It's not even a misdemeanor. It's a violation. And I believe the way it's worded, it says up to $500 or up to.
It says any violation of
30
this
jails.
ordinance shall constitute an offense punishable by a fine up to $500 per violation and/or imprisonment up
So-
to 30 days.
So let me just make sure we go back. One of the reasons that we got into short-term rentals is because of the 1% that doesn't turn out well, and sometimes I can't imagine our municipal judge putting someone in jail for a violation that's in that ordinance. And I can't imagine an instance where our municipal judge would fine somebody $500. But we all know that there have been cases that have been brought to our attention where the conduct at a short-term rental was egregious. It was egregious. And sometimes that helps people understand that if your conduct does become egregious at a short-term rental and you're running it in a way that it is, which I'm sure 99% are not run that way, but if they have that risk of some sort of severe penalty, it can help deter that kind of activity. So we can change that. That's not a problem, but I at least wanted you to understand that it was not the intention to say we thought that Judge Sherling would fine somebody $500 and put them in jail for 30 days for having a car parked. Frankly, I don't speak for you, but I don't think a municipal judge would remain a municipal judge long if he or she did that. So
I get what you're saying. I still would like to see that entire section changed where the penalties were completely different type of penalty than our standard boilerplate information. So I think there are ways that you can, honestly, the suggestion about Nashville not allowing them to operate for 12 months, that's much more financial penalty than $500, much more. And one thing I am concerned about is, investors that, might want to invest in short-term rentals that are here that will decide not to do that based on this. And I know my family had a need during some home construction, and it was extremely difficult to find an opening. And so I think there's a need for short-term rentals here in Enterprise, and we just want to be careful that we're not dissuading it and basically putting a sign up outside city limits saying we don't want y'all here.
Scotty?
Yeah, Greg, and I agree with you too on the $500 and that too. We need to take a look at that clarification a little bit better on that. We talked earlier. I mean, everybody's on my list here. I'm just checking things off. They said that. Ordinances on the books, oversized vehicles. We already have that. That says, oversized vehicles can't be parked on the street. So a lot of the information is already out there. I also agree with the commercial vehicle one. The response time. We've got to protect the homeowners. I see what the chief is saying. And I also agree. I err on the safe side. You're trying to protect those homeowners. You got to get to them. You got to find something. I want the city to be held liable for that. On 10G, we need better clarification on that. I'd go for something less than 180 days myself. I just recently was in an Airbnb down at Satellite Beach, and theirs was 90 days. But the thing was, and it's been ingrained in me from the military as a safety guy, when I walked in that place, I checked the smoke detectors. I looked for a fire extinguisher, and they had a book with the fire plan, but it was just really 2 rooms and a bathroom, and I knew where the exit was, and I do that on an airplane. I know which way I'm going to go, how I'm going to get out, again, if if it's a huge house, and then how do you clarify only put this in a 4-bedroom versus a 5-bedroom versus what I stayed in, a 1.5-bedroom type of thing? Do you put one in every room like we do in a hotel? The common sense rule, you know how to get out of there. You got the 2 exits, one in the back, one in front. And from the bedroom, I'm coming out, the 2 doors are right there. So we need to find that how we can marry that up. But again, yeah, I check smoke detectors and I checked carbon stuff, and I made sure. In fact, I had to tell the lady who was just next door that one of them didn't work, and so she brought a battery over. Strike 7, the clarification of business license too with the permit. We need to take a look at that, and I think with all the issues and all the questions and comments that we've had tonight, I would vote for, pulling this thing over until the next meeting, until we can get this back to the staff. One thing we've got to remember though is this has been a year, and we're not just, jumping right into stuff. We know cities around us have already amended theirs several times, so we want to do it right the very first time. We want to get it out there. But the thing is some of the folks here tonight were here at that meeting a year ago. In fact, we had even fuller people outside. What's not to say we wait and kick this can down the road another 2 months, 6 months. We get some new folks in with some new ideas. We've got to put something out there. We've got to make sure it's right when we do it this first time. So I'll just leave it at that.
All right. Yeah, I've got some additional thoughts and questions. So on this 180 days, that was it's kind of a new issue, I think, that's been brought forward. So, Rainer, were we presented with good information tonight that there is no distinction in state law of when it becomes a short term, when squatters' rights begin? And
I think the speaker's comments, for the most part, I thought were good suggestions, and I see no issue with, if it's the will of the council, reducing it down to 90 days. There's no issue with that.
So how are, and this may be a question for Leanne, but how would an extended stay be treated today or last year or next week? How would an extended stay hotel be treated?
Yeah, I don't
from a lodging tax standpoint.
I don't know. Maybe Leanne would know that. I wouldn't.
Leanne? 120 days, 189 days, or 79 days.
They would be subject to the same lodging tax that they would, whether it's a day stay. So it would be the county tax, the state tax,
because they're
and the
paying
city
day
tax.
by day by day.
Yes, they would be liable.
So, I mean, I guess that's my next question is, how, obviously, one of the reasons behind this is to even the playing field with who you're competing against. You don't want, nobody wants government regulations, nobody wants taxes. But to the extent one subsector that's providing a good or a service is being taxed and regulated, their competitors should be, taxed and regulated at some commensurate rate. How, if we lower this, which I'm all in favor of lowering it 90 days, 30 days, whatever, at some point it's no longer really a short-term rental from a lodging tax standpoint. But I don't know, which we can discuss this offline, but how that's enforced, how the booking platforms handle that.
And some booking platforms have agreements with individual cities so that they will collect and remit those taxes for them. We currently do not have an agreement with any of those locations.
Of course, we don't have an ordinance to agree with them.
Yes, true, but we've reached out to them to see what would need to be done in order to get an agreement so that they would collect those taxes and remit them. And the response was not positive, in that the size of the municipality and the number of businesses here is not necessarily one that they would want to go into the effort of doing that with. Yeah. So that would then be, so they are a lot of them though are collecting already for the state itself, but
Yeah.
then the municipal taxes would have to be remitted by each individual owner, again through the one spot, going online and doing it through the one spot. The taxes, I guess I just want to re-emphasize too, because I hear different things about people's concerns, is that we're not adding additional taxes.
Understood.
The taxes are already on the books. And it has been since that 11-17-09.
But we're defining what a short-term rental is versus
Yes.
a long-term rental.
Correct. Yes.
A long-term rental is not subject to lodging taxes.
Correct.
So how we define
Yes.
short-term rental does determine whether whether this person's stay is subject to lodging taxes or not.
Yes. And currently, like you said, with the hotel, if you're there for 120 days, they're paying
every day.
paying all the taxes. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just have more questions than answers there. You know, if the threshold's 90 days, then yeah, I'm gonna stay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna stay 90 days and then
Mhm.
move out after 3.
Mhm.
You know, how is that enforced?
Right.
So
Right.
that's something we'll obviously need to discuss. But I'm all in favor of lowering that.
Sure.
That number.
And again, these, of course, it's up to council. You know, this is based on your feedback and how you want to proceed with this. Staff will go back and rework anything that you all feel needs to be addressed and worked on. And I know you also have your constituents that call you and have their individual issues. So it's up to council. We're happy to move in whichever direction you would like for us to go. But again, we've been kind of kicking this around. I know a year, but really my staff's been working on this for longer than a year. It's been at least 2 that they've been working on it. And I know there were some things that were brought up even prior to 2 years ago.
So
time
let me stop you
has
right
been
there.
taken.
I think we're close, actually. I
Mhm.
mean, it sounds like we're not, but we are. We're close. I mean, I do. I mean, you know, I think, right? I mean, does anybody disagree that we're close to you know,
Closer. We missed a little.
Well, but
Yeah.
with some, you know, some nudges here and there with some of the suggestions brought forward tonight, some that we already had before tonight. So okay.
But absolutely, my point was not was just to say that we're open
Yeah.
to whatever direction you would like for us to go with this. It's completely up to council because it's you all who makes the policies, and we're happy to help address any of those things.
Practically, though, y'all need us to pass something in December
It would be great, yes.
because business license renewal begins January 1.
Yes, sir.
If we wait until January, then
Yes, sir.
that puts us probably a
Yes,
year
sir.
behind.
Yes, sir.
Another year in limbo. Okay. My next question is for Thomas or Barry, whichever one of y'all wants to take it. I assume Thomas. So Ms. Catrett asked about the engineering department inspections. How would you see that playing out?
Okay, so whenever we do any of our life safety inspections, notably right now, our business walkthroughs, the engineering department and the fire department do those hand in hand. Our senior inspector, Justin Tolbert, is normally one that handles it, and our fire marshal, Mr. Beasley, they're normally ones that do the business walkthroughs. If they can't do it, I'll step in, fire chief will step in. But anything to do with life safety inspections, and this is what we would consider those on the short-term rentals, the engineering department and the fire department would do those together. And what we would be looking for is just what is inside this ordinance, such as fire, the smoke alarms, carbon monoxide, fire extinguishers, maps, wherever we determine those need to be at. That's what we would be looking for.
Yeah. I actually witnessed y'all doing one of these the other day at the YMCA.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. ADA compliance. There's nothing in here about ADA.
We wouldn't be looking for anything that is not specifically stated in that ordinance.
Okay. I think that's all I have for you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So, I agree. I think mostly with what the rest of you had to say. I think that, of course, y'all can see here in my notes, I already said to strike Section 7. Already said to strike the second sentence regarding, and 10B regarding commercial vehicles, and consider changing 10D to something along the lines of a reasonable time frame instead of a specific 60 minutes. I think Chief actually even used those words. Just something that's a little less restrictive and accommodating. I think we can hopefully strike that balance between the owner's challenges and the city's needs. Let's see. Yeah, I'm with you, Greg, on the $20 permit. I'm kind of indifferent. 20 kind of seems arbitrary. It could be 5, it could be 10, it could be 20. But I think a permit, one business license, and then a separate permit for each. But certainly don't want to be cost prohibitive there. But need to cover the administrative functions. So let's see. What else did I have? We said strike 7. So G, this appears to be there's some margin for disagreement. That's the one that says no short-term residential unit may be rented for the purpose of holding weddings, parties, receptions, or similar events that typically are held at a banquet facility or other facility that is made available. So in my mind, if you're using a platform, online platform, to advertise your property as like he says, something that a banquet facility would be doing, then that's entirely different than a short-term residential unit. Now, I understand your concern, Sonia, on where is that line? Is that line at a small family birthday party, or is it at a wedding with 500 guests? But if you're renting your facility out for a wedding with 500 guests, that's a commercial, non-residential activity.
I think it's just common sense. I would turn it
Now,
down.
granted, to my knowledge, I'm pretty sure the two popular platforms, Airbnb and VRBO, neither one of them would allow you to advertise it as such. But so we're probably making a mountain out of a molehill there. But obviously, these are neighborhoods with neighbors that bought a home in a neighborhood with some reasonable expectation of peace and quiet. We do have some obligation to them to make sure that there's not a banquet facility next door, because that would be a violation of the land use regulations. So, I don't know how we thread that needle there, but I'm fine with striking the 30 days in jail. I don't think anybody is going to push back on that. So that's all I've got. So any other comments or questions? So I'm going to jump to a conclusion here and predict that we're not going to be passing this ordinance tonight. But I think the cleanest thing, we probably just need to let it die and see if staff can come up with something by December 6th with our input from tonight. And obviously, feel free to reach out. Is anybody opposed to that? So, do I hear a motion to adopt the ordinance? That's ordinance 110122A. Hearing none, we will move forward with the next agenda item. All right, we've got consideration of bids for a new recreation center. The following bids were received for the new recreation center. Bear Brothers, $21,660,000, with total all alternates and base bids of $27,776,000. Rayburn General Construction, $20,568,000, and all alternates and the base bid $25,990,000. Whaley Construction, $19,593,280, with total of all alternates and base bid of $23,162,394. Wyatt Sasser Construction of $147,193, with total of all alternates and base bid of $27,010,494. So the city engineer recommends that the city council accept the low bid Whaley Construction in the contract amount of $23,162,394, subject to and conditioned upon mutual agreement between the bidder and the city after review and approval by the mayor, city administrator, city engineer, and city attorney as to a suitable contract for the work. Now, I will point out that Rayner gave us some legal advice that hinted at the fact of a question that Eugene had of this pool heater alternate of how much. Barry, would you come forward?
Yes, sir. So the alternates are awarded in order. So if you do the base bid, then you can do base bid plus alternate 1 or 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, the last alternate on the list. So we can or cannot award alternate number 6. Alternate 6 was the pool heaters and was $88,239. That's the capital cost to have the heaters installed on the pool. That does not include any kind of operational cost.
What would total of all alternates 1 through 5 and base bid be? It would be that less the 88,000. Isn't that number on the bid tab? Isn't that the 23,074,155?
23,074,155.
Yeah. So is that your recommendation right now to move forward with that, since the plumbing is?
With the concerns of not knowing the operational costs of the heaters, if you were to award the base bid plus alternate 5 at the number we just mentioned, everything will be plumbed to add the heaters at any point in the future. It's more of a plug and play type unit. The pipes are there; they're just capped off to plug the heaters in a later date. So if there is concern there, my recommendation would be to award a base bid plus alternate 1 through 5, which would be 23,074,155. Yes, sir.
So it would be easier to add those heaters in the coming months than to deduct those heaters.
If you want to move forward with that as we recommended, then if we decided later we want to add those in, I can add those in during the construction project.
Okay.
We have roughly through contractors through May of 2024 to have this project complete.
All right.
See, it's not the original cost of the heaters I'm concerned about. It's the operating expense in months to come and the maintenance of them.
One thing I can do for you, Councilman, is I can, during the construction process, get submittals on what those heaters would look like and do a operational study for you during construction. And then before we get to the point that we would add them or not add them, we can always go back and add those later in the construction as a change order at a later date, if that makes you comfortable.
All right. Well, I'll entertain a motion to accept the low bid of Whaley Construction, the base bids plus alternates 1 through 5 of $23,074,155, subject to and conditioned upon mutual agreement between the bidder and the city after review and approval by the mayor, city administrator, city engineer, and city attorney as to a suitable contract for the work. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Does everybody understand what the motion is? So it's alternates 1 through 5 for $23,074,155. Rayner, are you happy with the way we handled that? All right. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. Moving on to new business. We will now have a public hearing consideration of Resolution 11-1522, which is for the Economic Development and Grant Agreement. So I call for a public hearing as advertised prior to consideration of Resolution 11-1522 regarding the consideration and approval of certain economic development incentives to be granted by the city to Aronov Realty Developer Incorporated and Johnson Enterprise Shopping Center LLC The public benefits sought to be achieved by such incentives are the economic growth and anticipated increase in new employment, tax revenues, and other benefits, which will directly benefit the city and serve a valid and sufficient public purpose. All right, this public hearing is now open. Is there anyone here to speak for or against this project? All right, seeing none, we will now close the public hearing and call for consideration of Resolution 11-1522, providing for the authorization to grant public funds and things of value not to exceed $655,000 to Aronov Realty Developer Incorporated and Johnson Enterprise Shopping Center, LLC, to renovate and or redevelop a commercial retail center or portions thereof at Enterprise Shopping Center, subject to the terms of the agreement. I'll entertain a motion to approve this authorization.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 11-1522. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now review and consider Resolution 11-1522A, which is a Mutual Aid Consortium Agreement, AAFC. I introduce and call for consideration of Resolution 11-1522A, authorizing the execution of a mutual aid consortium agreement between the Alabama Association of Fire Chiefs and the City of Enterprise. The agreement provides for an understanding between the and among public fire protection agencies of Alabama in the provision and reception of resources, equipment, and personnel for response to natural or man-made disasters, acts of war or unrest, or other emergencies requiring outside assistance. Resolution 11-1522A further authorizes the mayor or fire chief to execute the agreement. Do I hear a motion to adopt Resolution 11-1522A?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now review and consider Resolution 11-1522B, which is annual employee compensation. I introduce and call for consideration of Resolution 11-1522B, providing for an annual one-time compensation adjustment of $150 to all full-time employees and $75 adjustment to all part-time and seasonal employees of the City of Enterprise to be paid in the month of December. Do I hear a motion to adopt Resolution 11-1522B?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now review and consider Resolution 11-1522C, Severe Weather Preparedness Sales Tax Holiday. I introduce and call for consideration of Resolution 11-1522C, providing for the adoption of the Severe Weather Preparedness Sales Tax Holiday as per Act 2012-256, beginning at 12:01 a.m. on Friday, February 24th, 2023, and ending at midnight on Sunday, February 26th, 2023. Covered items include, among other things, batteries, tarps, plywood, and radios with a sales price of $60 or less. Do I hear a motion to adopt Resolution 11-1522C?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now review and consider Resolution 11-1522D to appoint a municipal judge. I introduce and call for Resolution 11-1522D, appointing Paul Sherling as part-time municipal judge for a 2-year term per the provisions of the resolution. Do I hear a motion to adopt Resolution 11-1522D?
So moved.
Second.
All right, with a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll now request to seek, there is a request permission to seek bids for the bay doors at the fire department. I introduce and call for consideration of requests from Fire Chief Christopher Davis to seek bids on 9 bay door replacements at Central Fire Station, the lower building. The request is a budgeted item in the FY 2023 budget. Do I hear a motion to grant this request?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now introduce ABC license request, Blue Rose LLC. I introduce a request from Blue Rose LLC, doing business as Big Blue Catfish Phil AM Bistro, for a restaurant retail liquor license located at 1016 Rucker Boulevard and call for a public hearing to be held at the regular meeting scheduled for December 6, 2022. No action on that tonight. And we've got an addition to our agenda, which I have lost my notes. All right, so we added to the agenda a resolution to ratify and confirm filing of condemnation actions related to airport runway expansion. This is Resolution 111522E, which reads, whereas the city has planned a runway extension project at the Enterprise Municipal Airport, whereas in furtherance of the runway extension project, the City Council desires to ratify and confirm that the city attorney was and is authorized to file condemnation petitions for the city in order to acquire land in fee simple related to the public purpose of the runway extension project. Now therefore, let it be resolved as follows. In the judgment of the City Council, it was and is necessary to seek the condemnation of lands of J.W. Henderson Jr., Juanita Strickland et al., and Ram 1717 LLC, and any other lands as determined by the mayor, city engineer, and city attorney in furtherance of and for the public purpose of the runway extension project, and it is ratified and confirmed that the city attorney was and is nunc pro tunc authorized to file and pursue to conclusion condemnation proceedings in order to acquire lands in fee simple for the runway extension project of the Enterprise Municipal Airport. Do I hear a motion to adopt Resolution 111522E?
So moved.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mayor, do you have a report?
Yes, thank you to our veteran service organizations and the Enterprise Chamber for the event that put together for veterans today at the Civic Center. Special thanks to the rabble rousers from Summer and Westport for providing every year at the event. Please note that the garbage collection schedule will change next week due to Thanksgiving holiday. Garbage pickup regular is scheduled for Thursday and Friday. Both will be picked up on Wednesday, November 24th. The city is gearing up for a busy holiday season. I want you to add these events to your calendar. The Enterprise Christmas Parade is November 29th. Congratulations again to the Enterprise Fire Department for being selected as Grand Marshal. I want to thank Aaron Grantham and the staff of the Enterprise Chamber of Commerce for their hard work putting together these special events. The annual Christmas tree lighting is Thursday, December 1st at City Hall. Whoville is Saturday, December 3rd, downtown. We hope you will be able to join us for these festive holiday activities. As always, please follow us on Facebook or visit our city website for news and event information. Thank you, Mr. President.
Sonia?
I just want to express I'm excited about our direction with our rec center and certainly grateful for staff for you all getting us to where we are with that, as well as the what seems like the never ending ordinance. We appreciate your diligence and patience with us with that, and thank everyone for coming tonight.
Eugene?
I would like to compliment what Sonia said about the rec center. Everybody's certainly glad to see the progress made there. I thank everybody for coming tonight. Wish you a happy Thanksgiving and see you at the Christmas parade.
Mr. Paget?
As they've said, it's so good to finally have a bid headed toward construction on this long project of the rec center that's been being talked about for many, many years. And I'd also just like to say how happy I am to be part of this council at this time when we have issues that come up like tonight, how we can just work together. We're all really trying to get to the same end point, and we can work together in such a good fashion, and the staff works with us, and just like the camaraderie that we seem to have amongst us that get things done instead of keep it all tied up and never can finish anything.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight. Thank you to all of our citizens watching us via YouTube. Congratulations, Captain Heiss. It's promotion tonight. That's awesome for the fire department. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. And I'll caveat something on the parade. We're looking for volunteers, so please contact Aaron at the Chamber of Commerce or contact me. My number's on the city site. We could use volunteers back there in the staging here where I'm working. It's great, and I'll echo what Greg just said. This is an awesome council, awesome staff department. We've thrown a lot out there. We've got a lot accomplished, and I bless you guys every night and say thank you very much to all our departments for all you do for this city. Thank you.
Yeah, echo what everybody said. I mean, obviously, Barry, thanks, and Jonathan. I know y'all worked tirelessly on this, and I'm probably leaving people out on this, but certainly congratulations to Billy, and Warren's here tonight. I know you were on the bus ride to Auburn several years back, weren't you? But Billy, you and your staff certainly deserve a fine facility, and I'm confident we're about to start on a fine facility. So, like I said earlier, a little anticlimactic, just passing a resolution, but a lot of work, blood, sweat, and tears went into what culminated tonight. So, can't wait to break the ground and to eventually cut the ribbon on it. And to piggyback on what Greg and Scotty said about this council. I mean, it's not always pretty. Leanne's probably a little frustrated with us, and I don't blame her. But like Sonia said, appreciate y'all's patience. This is the sausage making of local legislation. We're not Montgomery or DC where we've got fancy committee rooms and we can go back and hash all these things out. I mean, this is how it happens, and this is how it should happen. A couple of weeks ago, we thought we might come in and pass an ordinance, and we got looking at it and talking with people, and we were going a different direction. But I do feel, like I said earlier, we're closer than it might have sounded at times tonight. But I really do appreciate the spirit that was brought, and I think our constituents appreciate it too. I hope they do. I hope they realize that we're not trying to punish anybody or make life hard on them. We're just trying to be fair and equitable and provide, see all sides, because certainly one side got presented tonight, but there are other sides that weren't necessarily presented. So y'all enjoy your evening, and we'll see you again in 3 weeks. We're adjourned. We got a few more to sign up there.